Hello and welcome back to the Joyful Soul Creates. Charlotte here with a shaker card that doesn't use any foam tape. First up though, I'm going to show I use this spin the wheel app when I can't decide what to make, and for this card I knew the theme and the products I wanted to use, but I thought I'd have a look for a technique inspiration, and as you can see it suggested swinking, which is ink swiping. And I knew the theme of this card would be Halloween because it's part of a hop. More on that in a little while. So I chose some Halloween colours. I used Hero Arts inks in Tangerine and Green Apple, as well as an Altenew ink in Jet Black, and I also later decided to bring in some purple, for which I chose Catherine Pooler's Flirty Fuchsia. Swinking, or ink swiping, if you're not familiar with it, is exactly what it sounds like. You use the ink pad and you swipe across the paper, as I will be demonstrating here. I'm using just the very edge of my ink pads to make quite narrow lines, because I didn't want wide lines that you would get from swiping the whole ink pad. So whilst I'm doing that, as I said, this is part of a hop or a collaboration with some friends of mine. And we are calling ourselves the Boo Crew, seeing as this is a Halloween hop. And we also decided to call it a mini Hop-lloween. So welcome to the Boo Crew's mini Hop-lloween, and I hope you will hop through with us. The hop is actually a blog hop, so all the information will be over on my blog. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can find the link to my blog post in the description box down below. Also, whilst I'm not talking about the card, I must tell you that I did have some technical problems with this video. Again, my memory card decided not to actually save the second half of the video. I did my recording in 2 sessions because I needed to do something else in between, and the first session saved. When I came back to do the second session, the camera was saying it couldn't see the card, so I removed it and put it back in, and the error went away, so I assumed everything was fine. I pressed record and it appeared to be fine, but after I stopped recording and tried to remove the card, it told me that the footage hadn't saved, which was very annoying. And so I don't actually have most of the footage for this video. I basically have the swinking and that's pretty much it. However, as I said, the idea behind this card was to see if I can make a shaker card without using any foam tape. I'm trying to avoid buying more foam tape because it's not the best for the environment, and I'm trying to be a bit more conscious of that with my purchases. But I do like to make interactive cards, and quite often interactive cards call for using foam tape. For example, when you make a shaker card or a slider card, you often need to raise up your layers for the interactive elements to work. So I wanted to find an alternative way of doing that that wouldn't require foam tape. Back to the card briefly, here you can see how it looked when I finished my initial swinking. I was planning on leaving some white lines between the coloured lines, which actually looking at it now I quite like, but I did decide I wanted to bring in some purple as well and go over the white lines with that instead. This large Catherine Pooler ink pad is a bit trickier to do the edge of the pad swiping with. It's just harder to see where the edge of the pad is exactly, so I did have to kind of lean to the side and look under my hand as I was doing it. So yeah, as I was saying, I wanted to see if I could make a shaker without using foam tape or fun foam or anything like that. So I thought I would try using chipboard. I have used chipboard on a couple of other cards before. I used it recently on my glow in the dark card as an alternative to foam tape to raise my focal panel. That worked very nicely. I've used it on a couple of mixed media cards I made in the last few months, which I die cut the chipboard, so I knew I could die cut through it, or I thought I knew I could, but the chipboard I used for this must have been slightly thicker and I was struggling to actually cut through it. Side note, I was impatient and used my heat tool to dry off the ink before die cutting. If you are not impatient, you can just leave it to dry naturally, but I would suggest letting it dry for a little while just to make sure everything is completely dry so you're not getting ink all over your dies and die cutting machine. Back to talking about the chipboard again. The one I used for this card must have been thicker than the other one because my die was struggling to cut all the way through it. So once it had done the initial cutting, I just used my scissors and craft knife to finish cutting through it. And I did end up doing 2 pieces of the chipboard just to ensure I would get some nice dimension, because I felt like the one layer wasn't going to be enough to get my shaker to shake. This candy jar stamp I'm using for my card is a Trinity stamp set. I'm going to stamp this onto my striped panel with Versafine Onyx black ink, and I will actually stamp it a couple of times to make sure it stands out very nicely against that background. I actually got this stamp set several months ago in the spring, I think, for a hop I was meant to be doing back then, but it was right before I had the health issues that made me take a break from YouTube for a few months, and I ended up not being able to use it, so I'm really glad I've finally found an opportunity to make use of it. I will, as usual, have links to all the products I have used in the description box if you would like to have a closer look or purchase any of them. Those are all affiliate links, and I really do appreciate every time anyone places a purchase through my affiliate links. It really goes a long way to help me keep doing what I do. So having stamped the jar, I'm going to use the coordinating dies to cut it out. The dies come all nested together, and the jar die has an outline and also an inner piece if you want to cut out the inner piece to make a shaker, which I do. So I just didn't clip them apart because then I could make sure the alignment would be exact for all of my layers. So for both of the chipboard layers and the decorative top layer. And the jar shape is relatively simple, so if I want to use it just as is, I may well end up just fussy cutting around it anyway rather than die cutting it. So there again, it wouldn't matter that those pieces are still nestled together. So here's how it looks when it's die cut out. As you can see, the center comes away. As a side note here, today's secret word for the giveaway is googly eyes, which is 2 words, but that's what I've chosen. Please make sure to leave that in your comments so that I know you've definitely watched, and then go over to the Rafflecopter. Sometimes I forget to update the Rafflecopter to have the specific task for the day, so if I have forgotten on a particular occasion, please just check back a little while later and hopefully I will have realised to update it. And here we're going to skip ahead to the finished card because, as I said, the footage disappeared into the ether or something, I don't know. Hopefully it never happens again, but I will just talk you through what I did. So I have a little tabletop of sorts on my card base, which is the Altenew wood palette background stamped with Catherine Pooler's Twilight Ink. I filled my shaker with googly eyes because I felt like that was very appropriate for a Halloween shaker. The edges of my chipboard, to make them not stand out so much, I went around them with my black Spectrum Noir Illustrator marker. I did that on the inside of the shaker and the outside of the shaker frame to hide the core, basically, so that it wouldn't be as obviously made of chipboard. For my sentiment, I used one from Monster Mash by Fawn, which I used on a recent card. I did I Think You're Neat. And also I wanted to point out that I actually did a different sized card base for this card. Normally I create A2 sized cards. I had a recent comment curious as to why I, as a Brit, am not using British sizes, which is a good question. And I did decide to go ahead and do British sizes today. So this is an A6 card. And you can see here the difference between the A6 and the A2. So the A6 is taller and very slightly narrower than the A2 card, but there's not a huge difference. That is the finished card. As you can see, it does work as a shaker even without having foam tape. Those large eyes don't actually move, they're slightly too tall for the layers I have, so I would perhaps have added another layer to rectify that, although then again that would have allowed the small eyes room to possibly flip over, which would have been more annoying to me than the big eyes not moving, so actually I think it's probably fine as is. I hope you did enjoy today's video, even though it was missing a lot of the process footage. As I said, hopefully that won't happen again. Don't forget this is part of a hop, so head over to my blog post, link in the description, and hop along. I'm sure you will enjoy seeing everyone else's Halloween inspiration. Thank you so much for liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing with your friends, and shopping with my affiliate links if you choose to do that. Your support means a lot to me. There are a couple of other videos on screen if you'd like to see more from me straight away. Otherwise, I'll thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again in the next video. Bye!